For decades in Canada, to be unwed and pregnant was seen as a shameful thing. And in many cases, those women deemed unfit for motherhood say they were coerced into giving their babies up for adoption. Today, few question forced adoptions were unjust, but some believe they were also criminal. Now, as Jill Kropp reports, several investigations are underway. A class action lawsuit has been launched, and there are calls for a federal inquiry.
Parenthood is made up of a series of cherished memories, birthdays, a child's first words, and precious moments.
Happy birthday to you.
Did you ever get to hold your daughter?
No. No, I've never had my baby. Still don't have my baby.
In 1964, Sharon Peterson was 19 years old and naive.
I'm very surprised that I got pregnant. And when my mother found out, all hell broke loose.
Young, unmarried, and pregnant, a combination that in the 1960s stigmatized women like Sharon as immoral, feeble-minded, and entirely unfit for motherhood. She says her parents threw her out on Christmas Day.
It just seemed wrong to me that I couldn't keep my baby.
And on the day she gave birth, she says doctors and nurses were no help, strapping her to the bed and mainly ignoring her through several painful hours.
And I had made up my mind I was going to die. I said, oh, it won't be long now.
Sharon didn't die, but what she says did happen, she'll never forget.
Drugged for the birth and kept drugged for 3 days. And I was tied to the bed rail when I came to by my wrist.
That nightmare got worse. Sharon says she was forced to sign over all rights to her newborn baby girl.
So there was a big fight at the time I was signing the papers. I had never yelled and screamed so much as I did that day.
Sharon and many others say they lost that fight to a system that refused unwed mothers a choice to keep their babies. They call it coerced adoption. The 60s, it was the hippie generation and a time of free love. But it was also known as the baby scoop era, when babies of unwed mothers went up for adoption. Seen as a shame to their families and society, young pregnant women were often shipped off to homes for wayward women.
It was just such a traumatic event.
In 1969, Valerie Andrews was 16, pregnant and trapped. When she broke the news to her parents, she says she was sent away to a Salvation Army maternity home in Toronto.
I was overwhelmed. I was mostly terrified. I was really terrified.
Valerie's experience set her life's path. Today, she is the executive director of Origins Canada, an organization that advocates for adoption reform. And Valerie says many women are still grappling with the emotional scars of losing their babies.
You know, any mother that found herself in this terrible predicament would have to relinquish her child, surrender her child for adoption.
By the end of the 1960s, there were more than 50 maternity homes across Canada operated by the Salvation Army and various church organizations. Inside those homes, Valerie says, expectant mothers were treated like numbers.
Young women had their names taken away from them. Their identities were repressed.
Some might write it off as simply a sign of the times. But this woman, Hannah Anderson, says she suffered the same treatment 2 decades later. Pregnant at age 15, Hannah says she wanted to keep her baby.
At that moment, I decided that I was going to be a parent and parent my daughter, and we were going to manage, and it would work out.
It was 1982, the year Canada got its Charter of Rights and Freedoms. The year Hannah says her rights were taken away.
Our babies were being literally abducted from our bodies.
And, just like the women in the 60s, Hannah ended up at a home for unwed mothers. According to her medical records, at 5 months pregnant, Hannah's unborn baby was marked for adoption, and this, she says, was not her choice.
The only way that they could get her from me was to drug me.
And that, according to Hannah, is what did happen. She was drugged, allowed to hold her new daughter just once.
And then the nurse took my baby and she's like walking out the door of the delivery room. And so I yelled, "Bring me my baby. I want to hold my baby."
Did you ever see her again in the hospital?
No, they wouldn't let me.
Reverend Bruce Gregerson is with the United Church of Canada. It operated 8 maternity homes in this country. He says the church is doing an internal investigation into its maternity programs of days past.
The question of whether or not young mothers were coerced into adoptions because they didn't have information, I mean, that's clearly unethical. And does it cross over to illegal behavior? I think that's part of a reflection that would have to take place.
The Salvation Army and the Presbyterian Church have also announced internal investigations. Apologies aren't good enough for Hannah. She says what happened to her was criminal, and she wants charges laid.
I see that my baby was abducted. I believe that there's multiple criminal code violations that were breached in order to take our babies.
The RCMP told 16 by 9 it is looking into Hannah's claims before launching a formal investigation. Whatever happens, it won't erase the decades of waiting and wondering. Sharon Peterson says for 43 years, she looked at faces in the crowd and thought maybe one would be her daughter.
And I thought, I think that's my daughter. Don't ask me where that thought comes from. It's cellular. I just knew.
Like Sharon, Hannah Anderson could only imagine what her daughter would be like, and the loss has left an indelible mark.
Did life ever return to normal for you?
No, it was never like it was before this happened. I've never recovered from it.
Next on 16 by 9, a white lie or deception of the worst kind.
My mother was told that I passed away overnight.
Mothers and children torn apart, babies taken and adopted, leaving women with a lifetime of grief, and another side, children left with unanswered questions. These days, Gary Whitbourne leads an idyllic life, happily married, 2 kids, house in the suburbs. Adopted as an infant, Gary had a typical childhood, but he always felt something was missing.
There were still parts of me that were curious about who I was and where I came from. So that was where I felt very empty growing up.
Gary's only link to his past, this one-page medical report for Jason Albert, born October 8th, 1975, in London, Ontario.
That's my birth date. I know that I was Jason Albert when I was born.
Listing his birth name, weight, vaccinations, even his first smile. When he was 21, Gary tracked down his biological mother, and that was when things started to come to light.
She was fully expecting to take home my baby when I was born, and she was ready to.
But according to Gary's mother, that's not what happened. Instead, the 18-year-old got terrible news.
My mother was told that I passed away overnight. that I had died.
Well, Gary's mother says hospital staff told her he was dead. He was actually adopted 8 months later by an Ontario family and renamed Gary.
The people that I grew up with that have their parents and know the parents, and they have that story.
Left only with Jason's medical record, Gary is left with questions about the first months of his life.
I mean, it says I smiled and cooed at 3.5 months, but what does that really mean? Who was there to witness it, and who really cared?
It's the kind of story Valerie Andrews, Executive Director of Origins Canada, hears all the time. Valerie estimates 350,000 women in Canada unjustly lost parental rights, rights that mothers across the country are regaining with reunions.
We didn't get that opportunity to mother our own children. And unfortunately, this can make reunions difficult.
That reunion happened for Sharon Peterson and her daughter Michelle 4 years ago. 43 years after Sharon, a teenage, unwed mother, says she was forced to sign adoption papers.
I was looking at the calamari.
Oh, do you like calamari? Me too.
She's like a long-lost relative that I'm reconnecting with. I was adopted by loving parents, and they are my parents, but Sharon is I call her my Sharon mom.
Up on that little toadstool thing?
But Valerie Andrews wants more than reunions. She wants a Canadian inquiry into what she calls a systematic process to separate mother and child.
They had the right to see and hold and feed their own babies. There were illegal, unethical, and human rights abuses done to these women.
The Federal Justice Minister Rob Nicholson declined 16/9's request for an on-camera interview, telling us that adoption is a provincial matter. Lack of government action isn't stopping mothers in the search for justice. They've filed this class action lawsuit against the BC government, claiming abduction, fraud, and coercion. Whether that day in court comes, women who weren't given the choice to be a mother and the children who were taken from them say they are left to cope with the scars of being torn apart.
Babies were taken from mothers directly from delivery tables, which some mothers are calling abduction, and technically it is an abduction.
It really angers me because I think to myself, even by those day standards, who is given the right to decide who chooses to raise a child?
Next on 16/9, what would you do?
That's why I make sure that I eat a lot, especially protein.
You have to eat protein before you start your reading.
Before learning 20 languages.